All right, so continuing where we left off with DNS and virtual hosts, I'm now logged into my web server on Rackspace. And in the previous videos, we've worked on setting up our DNS through our domain registrar, and we've also looked at how we can test to see if our DNS has been set up properly. So now what we need to do is we need to modify the virtual hosts that we started to set up last week. So if you need a refresher, click back over to last week's lesson and look at or watch the virtual hosting videos, and you'll see how I got to the point of where I am today. So what we need to do is we need to venture into our Apache, we need to venture into our Apache files, particularly the sites available folder. And last week I set this up for Ciardo.com, but I'm going to change that to Ciardo.net so that it's proper. And just to make sure, okay, there we go. So basically what I did, since I renamed that file, I needed to make sure it was also available in the sites enabled directory. So we should see it in there. Okay, perfect. So let's get back into the sites available and make some changes to our Ciardo.net. Okay, so first of all, there is no www in that document root, or there's no Ciardo.com folder in that document root. So let's just change this back to www. And remember, our server name has to match exactly as our DNS is going to bring it. So we need to change that to www.ciardo.net. If we were doing the redirect on the server, we could make some changes here and leave the Ciardo.net and also do the redirect within this configuration. But it's much easier to just handle that on the DNS server. So again, let's back these off. Now, if you followed directly on the videos last week, you may have to make these same changes I'm doing here. If not, you can just enter the proper DNS information there. Okay, so we shouldn't have to do anything else there. So we've saved that, and we just need to restart our Apache service. And now we should be getting just the default web page at Ciardo.net, www.ciardo.net. So if we go here and refresh, okay, there we go. So now we have our default Apache page set up at www.ciardo.net. All right, so just to make sure that we've got everything where we need to, let's go back in and double check our Ciardo.net virtual host. And as you can see, we have our document root and directory set to var ww, which is just the default, and we have our server name set correctly here. So the next thing we need to do is set up an additional virtual host. And to do that, all we need to do is copy our Ciardo.net virtual host. So we can use the cp command. We can type Ciardo.net, and then we'll copy this to sub1.ciardo.net, which you'll remember was the other subdomain I set up. And then we can edit sub1.ciardo.net, and we can come in and change our subdomain server name. So now we want this virtual host to get triggered when someone types sub1.ciardo.net, and we want this to go to a different document root because we don't want to show that default page. So let's create a new folder, and we haven't actually created this yet. I'm going to add it here, and then when we go into the other directory, we'll create the document root there. and we'll call that sub1 here as well. Now, there isn't really anything else you have to do to make this work. Just change those few lines, save it, and we're good to go. So now the next thing we have to do is we have to use our a2en site command to enable sub1.crdo.net. And there you go. Now it says service Apache 2 reload to activate. Remember, I'm in as root. If you're not in as root, you'll have to use the sudo to make these work properly. Okay. So that's restarted, but I want to point something out here. Look at the error that just showed up. Warning. It's actually not an error. It's just a warning. Document root var www sub1 does not exist. So remember when we added that new directory? Well, we have to actually go add it for it to do anything, so for it to actually work properly. So let's clear first, and then let's go into our var www. And you can see here that we only have this index page, which is the index page that's showing up under crdo.net. But remember, we want a subdomain to work here, so we need to add that using the make directory command, sub1. And then, since we have to have something in there to trigger, we need to make an index file. Now, by default, Apache will serve within a directory. So if you create a directory in that document root, if it finds an index.html page in there, it will serve that automatically. So as long as we create an index.html and put something inside of it, we should get this to appear on the page. So let's save that. So now, if we look at our var www directory, whoops, you can see now that we have our index.html file, which is getting the default domains and crdo.net, and then we have a sub1 directory, and within that, that index.html file is going to get served when someone types sub1.crdo.com. So let's, just for good measure, reload Apache again. And you can see that we no longer have that warning, and so we should be good to go. So now if we go back over to Chrome, and we type, let's create a new tab here, sub1.crdo.net, we should get our subdomain. So now you can see here, both of our subdomains are working properly. And I actually created one more. We could go in and create another sub2, but that's not really necessary for this example. Both of these are pointing to the same server. So if we go to terminal and I type in ping c3, now this is from my local computer again, sub1.crdo.net, goes to 166.78.12.75. If I type in www. Goes to the exact same IP address. You can see that there and that there. But when I go to the web pages, they get very different pages. So we could continue to do this until basically our server runs out of memory and can't serve any more pages. But this is how you get multiple sites served from one server and one IP address. And that right there is the beauty of Apache virtual hosts and subdomains, and doesn't have to be a subdomain. It could be a different domain altogether. So this could be crdo.net, and this could be, this could be anything. Any domain you want could point to that. So that is how Apache virtual hosts work, and that's how they're tied in with the DNS system and with name registrations on the internet. So by this point, you guys should have a pretty good handle on how Apache works, how to set it up and install it from a basic level, and how to get very basic web pages hosted on that server from multiple domains.